Time to hear from a property investor who has a $30 million property portfolio, who built it from absolutely zero with no inheritance or anything like that. And he didn't do this 50 years ago. This guy is absolutely ridiculous. Now, he's not trying to show off. He's definitely not a flashy kind of guy, but he did just buy a $1.2 million Lamborghini Revolto. Why? Because he loves cars, because he knows that that's what's going to get him there. He's going to get his property, he's going to get his car dream by building a portfolio of properties, and that's what's been driving him. Hey everyone, my name is Joe Tucker, and together with Jeff Miles, we created Oz Property Investors, which has over 80,000 members in it, and they're all learning, they're all growing as property investors of how do I get a better portfolio. And each week we interview top property experts, people who have done the thing that we want to do, and then we just sit down and ask all the questions that we want to ask. We ask the smart questions, we ask the dumb questions, and we try and unpack the lessons so we don't have to make the same mistakes that this guy has done. He made a $250,000 property mistake early on in his property's journey, but he still got over it. Big key takeaway that I took out from this session alone was always take action. Right now, you probably have borrowing capacity, you probably have serviceability, and you probably have some equity in your portfolio. Why aren't you using it? I'm going to go have a chat to a broker right after this conversation to maximize my portfolio. Let's jump into the session because you're going to get some value out of it. Let's rock and roll.
Fast forward 20 years or 19 years from 2006, what are you sort of seeing that where should people, the lessons you've learned, how should people start or look to start today? What questions they should they be asking themselves? Is it budget based or is it strategy based? How do we kickstart our $30 million property portfolio today if that's someone's goal?
Yeah, great question. So I guess, I mean, it's very broad, right? So to build a $30 million portfolio, like it is going to be different, right? And if you want to be in the top 1% of property investors, then you're going to need to be in the top 1% of income earners. That's the reality. And so when I was building, when we were building our portfolio, the environment was different in terms of finance, right? And I think, it's as restrictive as it's ever been in terms of finance right now, with a 3% buffer and, all that kind of stuff that I got overlaid and has evolved a little bit since about 2016. But back then it was a lot easier to borrow money. And also don't forget, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, almost, asset prices have moved a lot. So, that 229K property being worth, call it 550 now, that's more than 2 times. So if we were able to build a passive portfolio back in the day, I think we got to a peak of 15 properties. And today we've only got 8 or 9. I actually don't know how many properties we've got, which is pretty bad. But we've rationalized some of the low performers. We've gone in and out of some assets. But to have 15 properties that we had in our accumulation phase back 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that's a lot less in today's money. So that might only be 6 or 7 properties in today's money because of the value of property moving over time. So I think that's probably a key thing when people are looking at headlines going, how do all these people get 15 properties? Well, yeah, they did because they were a lot lower value back then. And yeah, the finance environment was different. So, if you've got yourself to 6 properties today, then in this finance climate, then you're doing something really well. So don't beat yourself too much over, those sort of numbers.
So if you would you be able to do what you did? Okay, so let's just take the same Richard brain that remains, and then starting from kind of zero, and you're, I don't know, 25, would you be able to get, to where you are now, same kind of position in the current environment as it lays, as it stands?
You can still do it, but it needs to look different. So, in order to, if you have a vision to go, I want to build a portfolio of 15 properties, then you can do it. But you're still going to need to go and find a way to earn a ton of income. But you're most probably going to need to go down, say, the strategy where you're using trusts. That's not a strategy for everybody. And, I know a lot of people will jump on Instagram and say, just do it, just do the trusts. And, next thing you know, you're a multimillionaire. I can tell you that, if you haven't been through that process before and you haven't actually seen the nuts and bolts of it, it is very difficult to successfully execute that strategy. There's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of things that can go wrong. And at the end of the day, all you are really doing with a strategy like that is you're deferring the issues. So when I was building the portfolio, you would run out of one of two things. You still had serviceability issues, right? It was just a lot easier to borrow more. So I would run out of borrowing capacity or I'd run out of capital. So I'd always be looking to harvest equity out of the investment properties where we could. So, frequently doing valuations with multiple lenders and all that sort of thing. And then quite often there would be equity there, but you wouldn't be able to access it because serviceability wasn't there. Now, the thing I had to do, was really sort of focus on what I could do to generate more income. So a lot of the time, I invested a lot of time in my career back in the day when I had a PAYG role. And, I really tried to push myself to the sort of highest possible levels of each of the organizations I was working in. At times, it meant I was jumping from one organization to another for money. So if I got a 30 or 40K pay increase, maybe it was going to be a career limiting move in terms of moving sideways from one organization to the other. But if it meant I could buy one or two more properties off the back of that, then, I was going for it.
Everybody's in a certain different stage of life. And we had Ricky on last week and he was at that 83K income. And for him, the most important part was the flexibility to go to work from 10 to 2. So he could pick up his daughter and do all that sort of jazz. And he still managed to find a way. The thing I picked up from that is you said there has to be a way to do it. So he still figured out a way to do it. And he just had to buy lower value properties. So that dovetails into another question. What is the biggest challenge that I want to ask about with the strategy piece that because you probably speak to 50, 100, 150 investors, maybe more a month around that. What do you see that people is it lack of focus? Is it lack of execution? Like where are people going wrong with that strategy piece that people talk to?
It's a good question. If we're talking generally, because a lot of investors, right? They're crushed in terms of servicing. That's the number one challenge. And if you've got an established portfolio, it is quite difficult. You can do a lot of things, restructure debt, and then do things in a certain way. Look at using a non-bank strategy. But ultimately, you're still stuck in a corner in terms of serviceability unless you do something to completely restructure and, maybe you have to restructure and pull things apart, sell assets, move things into trust, all that kind of thing. It can be messy, right? But I think from what we see, the vast majority of population aren't backed in a corner on serviceability. They've got serviceability, they've got income, they're just not doing anything with it. And sort of the term came up the other day that I heard I really liked is that so many people are too busy to make money. I just thought that's a great term. I don't know what people are busy with, but they're just not taking the action and committing to making it happen.
You said at the peak you're about 15 properties, and how do you sort of think about, because I think this might unlock some insights of people, selling the property versus earning more and drawing that equity? Like, what is that equation? Is that purely mathematical for you, or is it risk-based? What does that look like for you, Rich?
Yeah, so I guess when we got to the point where we needed to fund development, that's when we started the rationalization process. Really, we did a few, like we did along the way before we got to that point. We did some tactical stuff. So we would buy an apartment in Sydney for 150K and do a $5,000 reno on it and put lipstick on a pig and sell it and make 20 or 30K profit. Not a lot of money there, right? But you got to sort of have the context of when you're coming from zero, anything you can do that's going to help the cause is going to be positive, right? So if we're making 30 grand on a flip, then that's 30 grand more than we had yesterday. So, we would do little projects like that. Sometimes the stuff that we would buy for a long-term hold, we would renovate, and then something would come up. We go, I don't think the growth of this particular asset's going to justify being a long-term hold asset, and so we would move out of that asset. Take a little bit of medicine in terms of CGT, and then redirect that into a higher performing asset. Ultimately, when we were down the line, more recently, we've rationalized a couple of our worst performers. You just look at the compound annual growth rate and you go, well, like the worst one we'd ever bought had about a 3% compound annual growth rate. Just wasn't a good asset, and I'd owned that for 15 odd years.
And that was one up in Logan, wasn't it? That was one up in Logan. We'd seen significant growth, probably, hadn't it?
Yeah. And that's even with, like, I think I sold in 22. Probably up till 2019, it hadn't actually grown at all. And it just wasn't a good asset, right? I mean, I kind of bought it with maybe an inner city mentality of it's a 4-bedroom house instead of a 3-bedroom house. People got to be into that. I was on a small block of land and it was surrounded with other houses that were almost identical to it. So, supply and demand didn't have much differentiation, didn't have any sort of future development potential. It kind of didn't make that much sense. I should have bought one down the road that was on a bigger plot of land that I could have put a granny flat on. But, you don't think about these things when you're really early in your investment journey. You just buy what you think is the right thing, and, you kind of go from there.
It's also a bit scary as well. Like buying those type of, like, thinking of those value add deals for your first one. I don't think that you need to necessarily, like, I guess what I don't want to say is don't look at them, because you should absolutely. Value add is such a valuable vehicle, but don't stress yourself out too much. It doesn't need to be the first one, but start thinking about it for the second and third one, because you can really start to elevate your portfolio beyond. But don't think, oh my gosh, now all of a sudden I have to go out there and find a high growth market and find the market is going to do most of the heavy lifting. So choose the asset and choose the market, then choose a house with established land, is probably going to do 95% of the work. And then if you can get value add on top of that, awesome. But if you can get a nice set and forget that stacks up, then it's going to do a large percentage of the work.
People usually ask what you did right, but I want to know what you did wrong. To get to that 30 million, you must have made mistakes along the way. We've made mistakes. Joe and I made mistakes. We'll go for my first property was a mistake. But anyway, about you, over to you. What mistakes have you made and what did you learn from those?
Yeah. So as much as we could talk a long time about, successes and all that kind of thing, I think I could talk even longer about mistakes. So the big ones, and look, mistakes, I hear my kids say mistakes are your friend. That's what they get told at school these days. And that's true. That's a great mindset. But geez, I tell you what, when you're making a mistake, it doesn't feel like your friend. So the big mistakes that we made in our journey, the biggest one by far would have been when we'd gone through this, period of buy and hold. We've done a few kind of like apartment flips. We've done a few renos, and I can't remember the year. I think it's about 2012. We've gone, you know what? We should be property developers now. So we exchanged on this property. It was in Hurstville on Croydon Road, and it was a raw site. It was about 1,400 square meters, and thought it's got an old house on it, and it's all busted up and whatever else. And thought, okay, well, yeah, we'll buy this. We'll put 4 townhouses on it, 6 townhouses on it. I don't even know, like, how many townhouses can you put on it? Let's just buy it.
Wow.
And we went up that learning curve pretty violently, where we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know the process.
Is this the joint venture you did? Did you go 50-50? No.
Just us on our own. It was
all your money, all your mistake.
Yeah. So this completely tapped us out at the time. It was everything we had in terms of capital and borrowing capacity. The alternative was to keep doing the buy and hold thing, right? And because that was working quite well, but we thought, let's do some numbers here. If we build 4 townhouses, we can make, I don't know how much money it was at the time, but we were attracted by that, right? Because a lot of people they see the success story of the development and think, you can jump in and have a crack. And I think, there's so much to unpack there. It went wrong. We didn't know what we were doing. And after about 18 months of trying to push this DA through council, it became evident that our architects also didn't know what they were doing. But because we didn't know what we were doing, we didn't know that they didn't know what they were doing. And we then got a hold of a draftsman who got recommended to us. And he had a look at it and goes, this is never going to work. And so he made some tweaks to design. Within 3 months, we had it approved for 4 townhouses. And we kind of had a sigh of relief because that was great. But by that stage, we were still both PAYG then. It was burning us pretty badly. I think it was costing us about $76,000 a year in holding costs. Well, we had someone in there. I think they were paying about $300 a week. But it really didn't make much difference. I think rates back then might have been about 7%, and they were actually going up. So it looked like, this is where the media kicks in, right? It looks like rates are going up, city prices are going to go down. There's nothing that we can do here. We don't have enough money to complete the project. So we ended up selling it, DA approved, basically 2 years after we bought it, for $20K less than we bought it for. Plus then you add in the holding costs, the stamp duty, you add in the consultant costs. I think we lost somewhere in the realm of $250,000 on that, and burnt 2 years, 2 valuable years. And it was a lot of stress, a lot of pain. And it was something that we sort of walked away from going, oh, shit, what happened? That was just absolutely brutal.
Such a waste of time.
Yeah, we kind of looked at it and go, well, we know what we did wrong. We didn't know what we didn't know. And, if there's so many lessons out of that. It's like if we would have had a mentor on our side, or somebody that we knew that had done this before, then, we could have learnt those lessons without having to go through them ourselves and having to make that expensive mistake. But, like I said, I kind of learn by doing sometimes. So you got to go through this baptism of fire every now and then come out the other side. We knew this draftsman. We went, okay, well, what can we do next? And that sort of led us to go, well, what's the lowest risk thing that we can do? We went and bought a little semi in Annandale in the west, and did a DA extension. Did an owner builder. The draftsman was able to refer some trades, and we sort of started growing our network of trades and builders and all those sort of consultants from that project. And we're able to, continue to sort of scale our understanding of things and that network from there. And that project, fortunately, was a really good bounce back. Like we made good money on it. By the time we built it, we ended up having our first child, and we needed a bigger place to move into. So we ended up selling there and then doing it again with another bigger place up the road. But we made good money on that one. I think it cost us about $700K, and we sold it for 1.36. The works were only about $250K or something. So over an 18-month time horizon, we're was kind of our little comeback. Okay, well, we're now proving to ourselves that we have the ability to do this, but we now know that you need to go into these things with the right team on your side, as opposed to just try to jump in and making it work on your own.
You find a trustworthy mentor that isn't there just for the money? Is it the questions you ask? Is it the relationship that's been referred? Like, how do you find those people?
That's a good question. I mean, to be honest with you, like I've never really had a mentor as such that hasn't come about
professional, like any kind of person, a mentor, professional. Sorry, but
yeah. So the only mentors I've ever had are as a result of a professional relationship, right? So like I had a mentor that I met who was a fantastic broker. I've got a mentor who I've met who's a fantastic business coach. I've got a whole heap of different kind of mentors in different capacities. And each of them, they're an expert in their own field, but they've always come about as a result of a commercial relationship, I suppose. It's really hard to try and find a genuine mentor who can, spend time with you and show you the ropes, so to speak, if there isn't a commercial relationship, because it's kind of like, like trying to find a unicorn, I suppose. It's just time, right? And I mean, the one thing I think over and above wealth, that we should all be cognizant of is time, right? And which is why I don't like wasting time with anything, and like I don't like wasting time with investing and sitting on the sidelines and not doing anything. I'm always wanting to move because time is so precious. Time is so rewarding when you get it right and you're invested over the long term. And time is something that we've all got a limited amount of. So, trying to make the most out of that time, I think it's very important.
Yeah, super interesting. That's the right way to think about it, because there's no one mentor that's going to give you the silver bullet. And I think that's what you learned from your draftsperson friend, right? Like person. You're an expert in being a draftsperson. You're an expert in town planning. You're an expert builder. But try and get those relationships from somebody else that you have a lot of respect for and that you know super smart and switched on, or someone that's done work with them, like your mortgage broker. Great. Do you know any good builders that have actually built a townhouse unit in wherever it was, Hurstville? Yeah, actually, I know 3 guys that have done that, because brokers know a lot of people, accountants know a lot of people, but there's no one size fits all mentor that's going to teach you absolutely everything about everything. But so many people along the journey that are so switched on that can give you so much information that is in their head, off the top of their head, and they say it like it means nothing, but is 10 years of work distilled into a easy sentence of like, yeah, you'll easily get that through council. Oh, but there's an easement at the back. Yeah, well, actually, that's a stormwater easement. It helps the development, in fact, because there's a stormwater drain here, and here, and the electricity's there. This is the best. You got to buy this site. This is great. Sweet. But if you don't have those people, so reach out and try and find them. I mean, how did you, maybe that's the better question to ask. How did you find these types of people?
Yeah.
Or how do you do it now? Because you're still doing the same thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and yeah, now I guess I'm in a fortunate position where I just get exposed to so many different people, so many conversations that, yeah, organically day to day, I'm just getting exposed to so many different people who are experts in their field, and not necessarily just property business, just through networking and through business. I'm very fortunate enough to have very organic conversations all the time. So I'm growing that network, which is fantastic. But then early days, you don't have access to those people. So, you need to start with, I think you need to start with assembling, your basic team. If you're starting out as an investor, you need to go out and you need to find, your superstar team that's going to try and set the platform for you at the start. And I mean, really the core of that, I'm not trying to be biased here, but the core of that these days, it is a broker and it is an accountant, absolutely. And then outside of that, it depends on what you're looking to achieve. If you want to be a developer, then you need to try and find people that work in that space who can help coach and mentor you along the way. It might be a draftsman, it might be an architect, it might be a town planner, so on and so forth, and then sort of building it out through there. It might be if you're looking to buy and hold, you might be wanting to build relationships with different buyers agents to go and get understanding of, okay, well, when I'm ready to buy, which one am I going to use? What area am I going to invest in? Whose strategy do I like the best? It's just building relationships with those people to start you off. And they might not always be the people that you work with forever, but at least you'll get a view, and then you'll be able to use that as a platform to learn from, and then accelerate your learning so you can move faster.